and welcome to episode 8 of Let's Translate Light Novels, where we will be analyzing the text of the light novel Seiranden, the prequel to Fushigi Yugi. I will be analyzing translations of my patrons and also of me, age 18, when I was an intermediate level Japanese learner and not very good at translating. If you want to join my group of patrons that translates this, either in my videos or independently, you can join at the $12 level and do that. For disclaimers about the series and credits of which translators are translating in each video, check the video description below. Let's just get right into it. ターリアとは幼なじみ同士。いつも兄弟のように遊んできた。That's sentence number 1. We're going to add a second sentence to that. お人形遊びに付き合ってやることもあったし、時には取っ組み合いの喧嘩もしてきた。Okay, so Ayuru, we're talking about Ayuru here. So Taria towa, Ayuru and Taria. Ayuru has been friends with Taria since they were very little. Always they played together like brother and sister. So this kita, auxiliary verb ending, comes at the end of both of these sentences. And what that kita is doing is it's implying that they have been doing this verb, like, for years, like through the years or over time, they have done this verb. That's kind of what this kita ending is doing. So over the years, since they were little kids, they played always like brother and sister. 付き合ってやることもあったし. So there were times when he would accompany her, go along with her doll playing. And sometimes, 取っ組み合い is roughhousing, no kenka mo shite kita. So sometimes they would roughhouse. So patron A translated that as, Ayuru and Talia have known each other since childhood and always played together like they were brothers. Sometimes they would play dolls together, sometimes they would roughhouse around. Patron B. Talia and Ayuru had always played together since childhood, like brother and sister. They played with dolls and sometimes had their share of heated quarrels. Patron C. Ayur had known Talia all his life and had always played with her as though she were family. Sometimes he went along with her doll games, and sometimes she got into fights with him. And then small Sarah, so me at age 18, Taria and Ayuru were long childhood friends and had always played together like brother and sister. They played dolls and roughhoused. And then I did not finish this thought here. I continued straight on into the next thought. So that's why there's a semicolon right there instead of a period. But yeah, you could think of that as a period, but it does connect with the next thing. So those are all of the translations, all 4. I've heard in the feedback I've been getting from these, a lot of people are saying like the most helpful or interesting aspect of these videos is just seeing the many different ways that it's translated by different people. So I wanted to put all of them out there first before I talk about them. So patron A's, Ayuru and Talia have known each other since childhood and always played together like they were brothers. So just a reminder that kyodai doesn't always mean brothers. It means siblings. Like it is gendered if you look at the kanji, but it's gender neutral really. So like they were brother, sister. Like they were brothers is okay too. It just doesn't need that gendered reading. Talia and Ayuru, patron B. Talia and Ayuru had always played together since childhood, like brother and sister. I kind of like that rearrangement there. So note how in the Japanese, it says that they were old childhood friends and always like brother and sister, they played. That's kind of the word order there. Patron B made the word order, they had always played together. So the part 3 of that sentence came first. Since childhood, that's part A of the sentence. Like brother and sister, that's part 2 of the sentence. So it rearranged it, and you can totally do that. And I like how that flows. And Patron B had a nice tighter translation of that. Wasn't as wordy. Patron C, Ayur had known Talia all his life and had always played with her as though she were family. So again, this one rearranged it in a similar way. The as though they were family, as though they were brother-sister part came at the end. I like that part coming at the end. I don't know, it feels a little more natural in English to put that part at the end, like the simile part at the very end of the sentence. In Japanese, when they do similes and metaphors, it'll be like a B. Whereas in English, it's usually be like a. Except for like, I'm thinking right now, the Madonna song, Like a Virgin. that does the simile first, but usually the simile comes at the latter part of the sentence in English. So small Sarah, Tarya and Ayuru were long childhood friends and had always played together like brother and sister. Small Sarah did that thing too. Yeah, all of us did that. All of us put the simile at the end. It's just the first two parts of the sentence were rearranged in each sentence. The second sentence, patron A, sometimes they would play dolls together, sometimes they would roughhouse around. So patron A didn't keep all the nuances in there, like, お人形遊びに付き合ってやる. To 付き合ってやる, that really implies like Talia's the one that really wanted to play dolls. Ayuru was going along with it. And the kenka part, the roughhousing part, it doesn't really imply that one is initiating or one would rather do it. I don't know that it matters so much though that like Talia is the one like saying, come on, let's play dolls. And Ayuru is like, okay, fine. Patron B, they played with dolls and sometimes had their share of heated quarrels. So tokkumiai, no, like if you look up tokkumiai, it does mean roughhouse. Kenka is a little bit vague. Sometimes it can mean like a fist fight. Sometimes it can just mean a quarrel, like, you know, arguing using words. Heated quarrels is good because it leaves it open. You know, you can imagine a heated quarrel being an exchange of words, but you can also imagine it being like punching. But the tokkumiai part does say roughhousing, like tumbling around like little kids, like wah, in the mud, you know. Like a minor detail, I don't really think that's that important. What this is doing is it's just kind of painting the picture of like, up until now they've had a very childish sort of familial sort of relationship because of what happens in the next couple of sentences, which we'll get to in a minute. Patron C, sometimes he went along with her doll game. So patron C kept that nuance of went along with, tsukiyatte yaru, and sometimes she got into fights with him. Small Sarah, they played with dolls and roughhoused, semicolon. So I guess the reason why Small Sarah kept that very, very concise is because she was connecting it with something else. So the next thing, the something else. Ga, comma, so but, 誕生日の贈り物など、今の今までやり取りしたこともない。そういえばこのところ、タリアと転げ回って遊ぶことも少なくなったような気がしていた. So two more sentences. So ga, however, like exchanging gifts, nado, or something like that. 今の今までやり取りしたこともない. Like up until now, they've never exchanged gifts. They've never done that sort of thing before. Exchanging gifts on birthdays. Like preposterous, nado. そういえば、このところ, so come to think of it, lately, タリアと転げ回って、again, like rolling around, tumbling. 遊ぶことも少なくなった. So, come to think of it, or it occurred to him that he got the sense that 気がしていた. He got the sense that they had not been like rolling around, tumbling like little kids as much recently. So I think that's why Small Sarah, let's just jump ahead to Small Sarah's translation of that. Let's just jump ahead to Small Sarah's translation. Remember, she left you hanging on a semicolon. They played dolls and roughhoused, semicolon, but they had never exchanged presents like this on a birthday before. So Small Sarah was just connecting these two ideas like a lot more fluidly than in like two separate chunks. Now that Ayuru thought about it, Taria's childish ways of playing had seemed to subside recently. So it's not necessarily Taria's childish ways of playing had seemed to subside recently, like they just haven't been playing like little street urchins, like little puppies tumbling around in the mud like they used to. Back to patron A. Up until now, however, they haven't once given each other a birthday present. Come to think of it, Ayuru thought, I like that dialogue tag there, I've been playing with her a lot less recently. You could do a dialogue tag like patron A did, or you could be like, it occurred to Ayuru, or like Small Sarah did. Now that Ayuru thought about it, that's another way of expressing that. It's not necessarily the narrator, like the voice of God being like, come to think of it. It's more like Ayuru noticing this. Patron B. However, they've never exchanged, I think it would be they'd. They hadn't, not they haven't, and they'd instead of they've. They had never exchanged birthday gifts before now. Come to think of it, it seems he spent less time with Talia lately. So patron B went with a more like the narrator is being like, come to think of it. But that does make it sound like it's the narrator having this realization, but it's actually Ayuru having this realization. Patron C, giving gifts on birthdays was something new, however. And now that he thought about it, it also seemed like she hadn't been wrestling with him as often lately. I like how, I'm going to say, all of us did the kono tokoro, lately, recently, that came towards the beginning of that sentence. I like how all of us put it at the end of the sentence. That's generally what you're supposed to do. In English, like Japanese, you may notice they often start their sentences with kyo wa or kotoshi wa, like this year, today, and then a bunch of stuff. In English, we do the opposite. We do a bunch of stuff, comma, today, or a bunch of stuff, comma, recently. And I like that we all did that. Yay us. Now we have some dialogue. Ayuru mo 11歳か. ... 少女は大人びた口調で言った。私も来月追いつくけど。So this is all Tarya talking. 少女は the girl. Again, we pointed out in the last few videos that instead of just the girl or the boy, like it would be literally in Japanese, it's better to just say she or he, because that's more natural in English. Patron A, you're 11 now, huh? I'll catch up to you next month, comma, Talia said in a rather mature tone of voice. So patron A chose to put the dialogue tag at the end of all the dialogue instead of in the middle of it. Patron B, you're 11 now, eh? She said in a grown-up way. I'll catch up with you by next moon. Keeping the month as moon. I like that for this story. I think it works really well with this tone. And, you know, they're an ethnic minority living in the middle of, you know, the outskirts of the Kuto Empire. So I like that. I like using moon instead of month. Patron C, 11, huh? She said gravely. And I'll catch up to you next month. That's even shorter. Small Sarah, so you're 11 years old now, huh? The girl said in an adult tone. But I'll catch up to you next month. Exclamation point. And small Sarah messed up the punctuation there. There should be a comma after ha, not a period. So a rather mature tone versus a grown-up way versus gravely versus adult tone. So otonabita, if you look it up in a Japanese to English dictionary, it'll say precocious, but it'll also say like adult-like. Otonabita, it's like you're trying to sound mature. So a rather mature tone of voice works. In a grown-up way, kind of works. In an adult tone kind of works. The gravely is a bit of a bolder choice. It still kind of works though, because if you're trying to sound more mature, you're going to put on your solemn airs and be like, oh, so you're turning 11. Like, oh, my little boy's growing up. I don't know, it just solemnly would work too, I think. But I think primly would also be good. I think Talia is more like, well, so you're turning 11. And like, then again, kedo, like, but I'm going to catch up to you soon, like next month. It's like, no big deal though, because I'm going to be 11 as well next month. So she's like trying to be all like, oh yeah, you're 11. Kudos, I'm proud of you. What an accomplishment. Then again, nah, it's no big deal because I'm going to be 11 next month. It's almost kind of like that. None of these translations are wrong. I think they all catch that tone a little bit. Although I think she's a little playful. So gravely for me doesn't quite hit it, but I like the attempt at changing like grown-up way or mature way, because that sounds kind of weird in English. I like that attempt at adding a different adverb. The next two sentences. あゆるはちらりと隣の少女を見た。もうじき自分と同じ11歳を迎える少女の横顔はなぜか今までのタリアとは全く違うように見えた。So two sentences. The first sentence, Ayuru chirarito, that's glancing, glanced at the girl beside him, or glanced at her, glanced at Talia. In this case, the girl, translating shoujo as the girl would work. Mojiki, like very soon, she was about to turn 11. No yokogao. So yokogao is the subject here, her profile, the side of her face. The side of the face of this girl who was about to turn 11, just like him. Wow, that's terrible English, but that's what it was in Japanese. For some reason, she looked completely different from the Taria that he had known, like up until that point. So patron A. Ayuru caught a glimpse of Talia's profile. She would soon be 11 years old like him, yet she somehow looked so different from the girl he once knew. I like this. It's so clear. It's so concise. It gets rid of that like messy modifying the side of her face was about to turn 11 years old. Just like him, it made much more sense. Patron A did this, Patron A achieved this by moving the whole profile, the whole yokogao that used to be in the second sentence. Patron A moved it to the first sentence. Ayuru caught a glimpse of Talia's profile instead of just, in the Japanese, it was just he glanced at her, the girl. By adding the profile to the first part of the sentence, you're throwing away that messy, like, the profile of the girl who was about to turn 11 just like him, that works in Japanese but not in English. Patron B, I you to glance at Talia sitting next to her, that should be him. For some reason, something about her profile looked completely different from the girl he'd known up until now. So this is a weird Japaneseism. It's so hard to deal with, like, sugata, ushiro sugata, sono senaka, and yokogao. Like, all of those things are really, really hard to deal with in translation, because in Japanese, it'll say something like, her profile looked prettier than he'd remembered, or her back looked angry, or whatever. And it works in Japanese, but in English it's just so weird. You're really talking about her, the owner of the profile. And this is how it can sound a little weird in English if you leave profile in the second sentence, unlike what Patron A did, moving it. Something about her profile looked completely different from the girl he'd known until now. Like, that actually does work a little bit, the way it's worded. Like, it could have been handled worse than that. Wait till we see small Sarah's. Maybe she did a worse job. Also, profile, because it has that meaning in English where it's like, it could mean like her dating profile, her Twitter bio. Like, profile can also mean that, not just the side of somebody's face. So I don't know, in my mind, it conjures up that kind of imagery when you see profile in that context. Like, Patron B did okay with this. It just, be careful when you're like describing a person's profile or a person's silhouette, sugata, or a person's ushiro sugata, like silhouette from behind, or senaka, back. It's hard. Patron C, Ayu darted a glance at the girl beside him, nearly 11, and that's a sentence of its own, and something about her face looked very different from the Talia he knew. So Patron C was kind of smart in completely eliminating profile. Because again, it just sounds weird if you're talking about someone's profile in English. Like, Patron B worded it okay, like, it does work. Slightly weird, but it does work. But Patron C just eliminated that altogether by just saying face instead of yokogao, just cow. Forget that it's her profile, just her face. I mean, the one little bit that profile adds is like, you get in the picture in your mind that they're sitting side by side. Talia's not looking at him. She's looking straight ahead and he's looking at her. That's the one thing that you get by keeping profile in there. But otherwise, yeah. Profile just sounds weird, and I really like what Patron A did, putting it in that first sentence. So small Sarah, Ayudu stole a glance at the girl sitting next to him. Why was the profile of her sitting next to him, soon to be 11, somehow completely different than it had been before? This is beautiful. I mean, it's terrible. It's bad. I like, actually, that small Sarah made it into a question, like a question from Ayudu's point of view. This nadzeka, it means for some reason, somehow, maybe small Sarah did not understand that and thought that it was literally why. Like, I like that it was a question. It's cute. But yeah, why was the profile of her sitting next to him, soon to be 11, somehow completely different than it had been before? This is just a perfect example of like how bad it sounds if you try to keep the syntax, the word order the same and translate it more literally. It's so jumbled, and like the profile looks like seems different than before. It's more her, Talia. He's looking at her profile and thinking that she overall like seems different than before. That's why this is so tricky. All right, but I'm really glad that small Sarah did a bad job because that's exactly what I wanted to illustrate. All right, so this next section is where the thumbnail of this video comes from, and I expect I'm going to spend a very long time talking about it. So, yay. Ne, ii koto oshiekko shinai? And then Ayudu asks, well, there's no dialogue tags. That was Talia asking that. And then Ayudu asks back, oshiekko? Kubi o kashigeru Ayudu ni Talia wa kira kira kagayaku blue no hitomi o muketa. So, atashi tachi ichizoku no okite. And then Ayudu repeats with a lot of ellipses, okite. All right, so let me give the translations of all the patrons in small Sarah first, and then I will explain why this is such a challenge to translate. So patron A, hey, won't you tell me the neat thing that happened to you? What neat thing? Ayudu was confused. Talia turned to him, her blue eyes shining bright. Yeah, with the code of our clan. The code. Patron B, hey, let's share secrets. Secrets? He tilted his head. Her sparkling blue eyes met his. Yeah, the code of our tribe. Code. Patron C, do you think you could give me some lessons? She asked. Lessons? Talia's sparkling blue eyes met his. Yeah, about our ways. Ayer scratched his head. Our ways, huh? Small Sarah. Hey, want me to tell you something? Tell me something? Talia faced Ayuru's head with glittering blue eyes. Yes, about the family's law. And for some reason, small Sarah left out Ayuru repeating okite back. Okay, so the second part of this dialogue exchange is kind of similar between all of the submissions, except the way okite is translated. So patron A translated okite as code. Patron B also translated it as code. Patron C translated it as ways. And then small Sarah translated it as law. And family, ichizoku, I think small Sarah was a little confused and thought that ichizoku literally meant family when it really means more like tribe, clan. Like it can mean family, but it's like super, super extended family, village. All right, so, but the thumbnail, the source of some of this confusion, oshiekko. It's oshiekko suru. So patron A, won't you tell me the neat thing that happened to you? Patron B, let's share secrets. Patron C, do you think you could give me some lessons? And small Sarah, hey, want me to tell you something. So all of these translations are pretty different, right? In fact, two of them are sort of like in direct conflict. Patron A and small Sarah's. Patron A is like, won't you tell me something? And then small Sarah is, hey, want me to tell you something? That's like the opposite, basically. And then patron B, let's share secrets. Patron C, give me some lessons. So the most wrong one here is patron C. I'm going to explain why all of this is later. Full disclosure, patron B reached out to me and asked me, they said, yeah, I just cannot for the life of me figure out what oshiekko means. And I gave them a hint, and I'll give you the hint that I gave them right now. Oikakekko. If you look that up, oikakekko suru, it means like to chase each other, to play tag. Does that give you a little hint? Oikakeru is to chase after someone. Oikakekko suru is to chase each other, to play tag. Here's another hint, niramekko. Nirameru, like nirame, that part of it is the stem for to glare at someone, to stare at someone. Niramekko means to have a staring contest. So with those clues, it should clue you in on what oshiekko might mean. You notice if you add a small tsu and a ko plus suru to the end of a verb stem, it means that two people are doing this verb at each other or like together. It's kind of like the auxiliary verb au, like dakiau, aishiau, taskeau. That means like to love each other, to hold each other, and to help each other. Tsukiau, to date, to come along with somebody. There are a lot of verbs with the auxiliary verb au. There are not very many verbs with the auxiliary verb ko at the end. Really, niramekko and oikakekko were the only two examples that I could think of, besides oshiekko. And I looked it up also just in, like, I knew what it meant intuitively, but I needed to make sure. So I looked up on Japanese, like, answers, basically. Someone else was asking, okay, well, could you say tabekko suru to express, like, I'm sharing, eating something with somebody? And somebody answered, well, yeah, like, you can add the ko suru to the end of a verb stem, and it makes it so that, like, two people are doing the verb together, they're sharing the verb. But it's not used with that many verbs. To be honest, like you can't just add it to any old verb stem and have it make sense. That's one thing. It's not used with very many verbs. And the other thing is that it's childish if you use it. And if you notice, like oikakekko, like people chasing each other, playing chase, playing tag, and niramekko, staring contest, both of those things are games that children play. So oshiekko is also sort of like a game. Now, if this novel were not like taking place in pseudo-ancient Mongolia, Hokkaido, outskirts of Japan. And if it were instead happening in like contemporary times, I might actually translate oshiekko as truth or dare. Like, hey, want to play truth or dare? That's kind of what she's actually asking him. It's, hey, do you want me to tell you something cool, ikoto, and then you, in exchange, also tell me something cool? That's basically what she's asking him here. With oshiekko shinai? Wouldn't you like to? Hey, would you like to share secrets? Like patron B said. And to be fair, patron B is the one who reached out and asked for a hint. So patron B, I'd say, got it kind of the most correct, in air quotes. It's still a little bit clunky, and Patron B had a note saying I had a hard time coming up with what to do with oshiekko shinai. That still sounds natural. I agree, it's hard. I considered dropping the teach each other nuance, tell me something, because I wasn't sure what she was teaching him unless that was the okite thing and he didn't know that. And maybe he didn't, and that's why he responded with okite, though he's not using a question mark. Not super happy with how I have it, since teaching him about the code isn't exactly a secret, though it may be that neither of them knew about it, like she only learned the night of the ceremony when her parents said she couldn't go. And then Patron B also said that they kind of wanted to use commandment for okite. I like commandment for okite. But the way Talia was reciting the rule, it didn't exactly feel very from on high or religious, but my reading of the Japanese was that it kind of sounds like there's the one code commandment. Maybe if I knew what the command meant, I could reword that into something more commandment-y. Yeah, okite is kind of hard. And then to be fair, again, let's add another layer to this whole confusion. The next section, the next excerpt of this that I just sent out to the patrons for July's videos, from the context there, all of these patrons would have had a better time translating this oshiekko shinai. Like, to be fair, this is why, like, context is really important, and why it's also really important to be able to, like, read the whole thing first before you can translate it. I made it harder without meaning to for everyone involved, except Small Sarah. Small Sarah had the whole book at her disposal, so she has no excuses. But yeah, based off of the context that everyone did have with this section, Patron A's choice, hey, won't you tell me the neat thing that happened to you, actually works very well. And I have a feeling, I'm just guessing, that Patron A sort of guessed at and parsed that out from the context, from what came next after this. And that's pretty smart. Like, when you're stuck, just see if it makes sense with the rest of it and with the thing that comes immediately after it. Small Sarah's, hey, want me to tell you something, does not work. You'll see with the text that follows after this, because Taria is going to have Ayuru tell her something. So it just doesn't really make sense. Do you think you could give me lessons is not correct? I mean, you could sort of, like, parse that out by the following conversation that they have. Yeah, but it's not exactly lessons, it's just ikoto, just a good thing, a cool tidbit of information, something juicy, something useful. I mean, ikoto can mean so many different things too. And Patron C also had a footnote, although it was in about our ways. Patron C translated okite as ways. It doesn't sound so far like the Hinzoku have much of a formal government, so these are probably more unwritten customs than formal laws. I could turn out to be wrong on that. Maybe it's Tenko issuing laws to them. Yeah, and yeah, commandments. I think I did like oracle in one of my earlier translations as Small Sarah. There's a lot of different ways you can translate okite. I think law is fine. I think code is fine. I even think ways is fine. But yeah, commandment would also be okay. Like, if there are a list of commandments. That's another thing that, like, once you read through or translated through the whole book, you would then decide, okay, I think this okite should be translated as commandments. So yeah, a translation of ne, ii koto oshiekko shinai? Oshiekko, like, hey, well, hey, wanna share secrets? Like, what do you mean share secrets? Ayuru asked, tilting his head in confusion. Talia's blue eyes sparkled brightly, as she looked at him. That's a bad translation. I'm just describing literally what's happening. Yeah, that's right. About our clan's commandments. Our clan's commandments, ... It's like, you want me to tell you about commandments? It is kind of a confused questioning, sort of, even though there's no question mark. It's like, about our commandments. He's like kind of repeating it in confusion, kind of like, So that's what that whole dialogue exchange is, and that is the long version of what ko suru means. Now I'm going to add yet another thing about this, because I don't want you all to be confused and think that every time there's a small tsu with a ko after something, that this is what it means. So if it comes after a verb stem plus ko with the small tsu before the ko, plus suru. That's what this is. That's what this whole grammar rule is. Like, it's like au, it's like we do this verb together, or at each other, basically. If it's a verb stem plus ko plus nai, no suru, no shinai, but just nai by itself. Like, yume wa kanai konai. That means there is no way in hell. There's like, I would be silly to believe that dreams come true. That's what that means if it's verb stem plus ko, small tsu ko, plus just plain old nai, not shinai or suru. Noun plus ko, small tsu ko, that means that you're like, you could almost think of it as like the noun followed by a hyphen followed by kid, girl, or boy. Like, or almost like the suffix ling or let, or if you speak German, like the suffix chen or lein. It kind of cutesifies and kidifies the noun. Like you are a kid who is this noun, or you are a kid who likes this noun. Like dojikko. Like doji is a klutz. Dojikko is like, oh, you're a klutzy kid, or you're a kid that is a klutz. It just kind of makes it cutesy, and like you are a kid who fits this description. Like you are this description, basically. So that was my long tangent on what this small tsu ko thing means. Back to the light novel text. ターリアは脇の小石を拾うと湖に向かってえいと投げた. So Talia picked up the small stone or stones, probably just one, at her side, like next to her, and threw it at the lake with an "ei." You may have heard, like if you watch enough anime, little girls in particular, if they throw something or jump, or usually if they throw something, they'll go "ei." And it's just this kind of yelling thing that you do, like "yeah" or "hiya" or "wee." It's just like a sound that you make when, like oomph, when you're throwing something or exerting some physical force, basically. So that can be translated kind of however you want. Patron A, Talia picked up a pebble and threw it into the lake with a grunt. With a grunt. Yeah, that's kind of what it is. Patron B, Talia picked up a pebble beside her, so that's the waki, and hurled it into the lake with a light grunt. Light grunt is kind of nice. It makes it daintier. Patron C, Talia picked up a pebble from the shore beside her, and there's a footnote here. I guess I'll have to use this one little pebble to do the work of 33 whole center dots. Ganbatte, pebble-kun. This footnote will become a little more clear later. So note that Patron C left out the hurled it into the lake, and there's a reason why. You'll kind of see that that's going to be moved. Small Sarah translated that as Talia collected some stones and threw them into the lake with a yell. So I don't think it's stones and collected, like I'm imagining that, like throwing them all with a yell. Yell implies like, ah, it's not. It's more like, ee, or yeah. It's cute, cutesy. It's not like, rah, Spartan, this is Sparta. Hurl a bunch of stones into the lake. Nah, it's a little pebble. 10歳を迎えた賓族の男子は、主様へのおめどりの儀式に参加できる。End of quotes. 石の落ちたあたりに小さな波紋が広がった. So this is Taria speaking, even though there's no dialogue tag. And it kind of is, because it's describing the action of the stone that she threw as this dialogue is happening, so it is clear that she's saying it. Hinzoku, hin, tribe, clan, boys who reach the age of 10 get to attend the audience, if that's what omedori is, like to have an audience with someone, someone in power, basically, someone powerful. Nushi-sama is like the master, the lord. So they get to attend the audience ceremony, the summoning ceremony of our Lord, basically. And then the description after that dialogue is where the stone had fallen, a tiny hamon. So a hamon is, watch JoJo, a hamon is, it's a ripple on the water, but in the shape of a circle. Ga hirogatta. So like it's fell and then this circle rippled out, basically. So patron A, yeah, so the code, ... Talia picked up a pebble and threw it into the lake with a grunt, that when a boy in the Hin clan turns 10, he can participate in the ritual to present himself to Lord Tenko, she clarified. Small ripples were spreading from where the pebble fell. Patron B, Hin boys who have reached the age of 10 may attend the ceremony and have an audience with the Lord. Small waves rippled out from where the pebble entered the water. Patron C, Litoran boys. So recall from the last video, Patron C chose to translate Hin as Litoran. Because it does mean like of the water, of the lake, like it's the very obscure Chinese-ish kanji for hama, as in Yokohama. So it does have a meaning, but it's pretty obscure. Littorin is also pretty obscure. I wouldn't have known the meaning before I did these videos. Littorin boys who have reached the age of 10 are permitted to participate in the rite and receive audience with Lord Tenko. Receive audience, I don't know if, it sounds weird, but I don't know if it actually is weird. It's one of those things I'd have to look up because we don't use like audience in casual everyday speech. Like, I seek an audience with you, my lord. I seek an audience with His Royal Highness. You know, that's like the only context in which I've ever heard audience. Like, we don't use it, so I don't actually know if receive audience is correct. I'd have to look that up. With Lord Tenko, she turned back to the lake and hurled the pebble towards it. So this, she turned back to the lake and hurled the pebble towards it, that came earlier, but because Ayuru is going to be silent through all of this next part, like Tarya is going to be saying stuff, and like there's ripples on the lake and stuff, and Ayuru is silent throughout all of it. So patron C is choosing to express this by like focusing kind of on the pebble and it being thrown and the ripples and all of that in place of, you know, just to indicate that there is silence and that there's like a pause when Talia is saying all of this stuff. Small Sarah, boys of the Heen race, I should not use race, clan, tribe, who pass age 10 can participate in Our Lord's Omedori ceremony. So Small Sarah probably just like tried to look up Omedori and like couldn't find it. So it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to use the word Omedori. That's fine, it works. Where the stones had fallen, a small ripple had formed. But yeah, I mean, Omedori, it does have a translation for sure. It's just, it's not bad. You could even leave out the Omedori altogether. Just participate in the ceremony. But it's like, yeah, participate in the summoning ceremony. You get to meet him, basically, is what she's saying. Present himself, patron A, present himself to Lord Tenko. I like that because it expresses what it actually is. Have an audience with, like, that more implies, like if I have an audience with a king or something, it means I go to the king and I tell the king, oh, my liege, I implore you, the crows have been destroying my crops and I cannot afford the taxes this year. Please, I beg you, my liege, mercy. And then the king listens to me, he's my audience. And then he says, okay, yes, I am a good king, and I will say that not only do you not have to pay taxes this year, but no one does, because I'm a good king. But yeah, that's what an audience is. But this thing with Tenko isn't necessarily dialogue-y like that. It's more, from what I can tell, he just comes down, and people see him. So I like that present himself. Next line of dialogue, Ne, ayuru kara oshiete. So this goes back to the oshiekko shinai. So she's like, hey, wanna tell good things to each other? And I was like, what about? And she's like, about our commandments of our tribe. And she's like, and then she's clarifying, well, you know how when boys are 10, they get to attend this ceremony, right? Now you go first. You tell me the good thing first. Ne, ayuru kara oshiete. Kono mae gishiki ni ittan desho? You went to the summoning ceremony, didn't you? And then there's a bunch of dots from Ayuru. I'm not going to count them. There's a lot. A lot of dots of silence. Okay, so if I were translating this contemporarily and I'm like, hey, Ayuru, want to play Truth or Dare? And he's like, about Truth or Dare? She's like, yeah, and the subject is the commandments of our tribe. You know how, 10-year-old boys get to go to the summoning ceremony, right? Now you go first. I choose truth. What happened when you went to that ceremony? You went, right? I know you did. So patron A, come on, tell me, you went to that ritual, right? And remember, patron A before translated oshiekko shinai as, hey, tell me something, Ayuru. So this works, like contextually with the previous translation. Patron B, tell me, Ayuru, you went to the ceremony last time, didn't you? And then for the dots, Ayuru kept silent. Patron A left out the dots altogether. Patron C, so I want to hear about it from you. You must have been to the last one, right? With the context, with the way the rest of this was translated before, it works. It's not what it was in the Japanese. It's more, hey, you go first. We're sharing stories and you go first. Like, we're sharing stories about our tribes, laws, you go first. Tell me what happened there. But it still works based off of the translations Patron C was doing earlier for oshiekko shinai. The only sound was the stone striking the surface of the lake. That's the translation of ... And I like that. Because we wouldn't do ... in English prose, we would do something more like this. The only sound was the stone striking the surface of the lake. just to show, hey, there's silence. He's not responding. And it's awkward. Small Sarah, hey, tell me the truth, Ayuru. You went to the ceremony, right? Tell me the truth? I guess that's okay because, like, he has been quiet about it and she didn't know what actually happened to him. So it works. You went to the ceremony, right? And small Sarah also did not translate the ... Talia continues, うちの父さんや母さんは行くはずがないって言ったけど、でも私、あの晩、あゆるの家へ行ったら、誰もいなかったもの。So, my mom and dad said that there was no way that you would have gone, but I went to your house that night and no one was there. だもの. So it's like, I'm explaining, like, this is why I know you went. Because even though my parents said you wouldn't go, there was no way you'd be there. 行くはずがない. I went to your house and you weren't there. No one was there. So of course you went. Patron A, my family told me that I absolutely couldn't go and see it. And when I went to your house that night, no one was there. Ayuru stayed silent for ... Patron B, my mother and father said I couldn't go. But when I went by your house that night, my mother and father said I couldn't go. That's wrong. So, 行くはずがない. That means they said that there was no way that you would go. It's hard because there's no pronouns, right? Pronouns would be kind of useful here, but yeah, she's talking about Ayuru, not her. But when I went by your house that night, there was no one home. And then Ayuru still said nothing for ... Patron C, my mom and dad said they didn't think you'd go. 行くはずがない is like, there's no way. Like, why would Ayuru go? Of course Ayuru wouldn't go. That's more like what 行くはずがない is. But I went over to your house that night and there was no one there. Small ripples were spreading across the lake from the spot where the stone had fallen. So that came earlier. It's not like this patron is just adding shit. Like, it was there earlier. Patron C is sort of just like dragging that initial, she threw the pebble and then it landed in the lake and then there was ripples. Patron C just extended that throughout all of the ellipses of silence. And I like that choice because, like, it's cool and it paints a good picture and it keeps the part that she's saying all this stuff and he's just silent. Small Sarah, my mom and dad said there was no reason for you to go, but when I went to your house that evening, you weren't there. So there's no reason. That's a little wrong. But it kind of goes with the whole, like, why would he go? Like, there's no way he would go. Next line of dialogue from Taria again. Matuta oba-san ya Ayuru datte minna onaji ichizoku no nakama janai. Nanoni, 儀式に参加できないなんておかしいよ. So, Matuta Oba-san, so Auntie Matuta, and you, Ayuru, like, datte, like, even you guys, you're the same tribe, just like the rest of us. Like, we're nakama, we're all members of the same tribe, we're family. So, like, why would you not go? That's really weird, that, like, the idea of you not going to that ceremony when you're 10, like that's just weird. Patron A, aren't you, me, and Miss Matuta all part of the same clan? The fact that I can't go to the ritual is strange. That's wrong. It's the fact that you, like, it just wouldn't make sense for you not to go because you're a boy and you're 10. So of course you would go. Patron B, we're all part of the same clan, aren't we? You and Aunt Matuta too. So it's strange if you couldn't go to the ceremony. That's correct. Patron C, I mean, you and Matuta are no different from any other Latoran, so it would have been really weird if you couldn't have gone to the rite. This is more like the nuance of what the Japanese was. I like rite also for gishiki, and Patron C had a footnote here. Definitely an important line. It is actually, and it becomes significant a little later in the novel of why it's important. And I hope I did it justice. I really don't have a strong sense yet of whether Talia suspects there actually is something weird about Ayuru here, or if she actually is just babbling innocently. I'm mostly assuming the latter here. If she was actually suspecting something and looking for reassurance, there would probably be a different way of wording this. Yeah, I think so. I think she's just innocently babbling. Small Sarah. Aren't Auntie Matuta and you part of the same tribe as we all are? So saying you can't participate in the ceremony is weird. That's a little more literal, the wording of that. 儀式に参加できないなんて, so saying you can't participate in the ceremony, おかしいよ, is weird. So Small Sarah kept that word order, which doesn't always work. it sounds a little bit weird here, but not too terribly weird. And you know, Talia's like 10, almost 11 years old. It's not like she's an eloquent speaker or anything anyway. Justified. So anyway, that is the end of part 8 of Let's Translate Light Novels. My throat is sore. I'm gonna get myself a glass of water before I record part 9, which should be out in 1 or 2 weeks after this. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting this series. Again, reminder, if you want to be one of the patrons in these videos, translating things and getting your translations evaluated by me, and you know, get to compare your translations to other people's translations, you can join at the $12 level. And if you joined at the $20 level and become my eternal fan, you get to hear me say your name like I will now for thanking these patrons: Greg, Lay, Charpixie, DataFox, and Henry Roaming. Like, seriously, with inflation and the yen-dollar exchange rate is really killing me right now. I am literally losing hundreds of dollars every month now because I'm paid mostly in yen, and the exchange rate is so terrible right now. So like, having these patrons and this little system that I have going on here is a big help to me. I hope it's a big help to you. Again, tune in a week or 2 weeks. My birthday is June 20th, so I'm probably not going to upload that Monday. I upload every Monday here, but you know, 1 to 2 weeks we'll have part 9. Bye bye!